Ani and G'day. My name is Adele Loosemore and I'm a Treaty Indian from Shebahonaning. In this video, we're going to take a look at part of the information that the Métis Nation of Ontario published in the Canadian Geographic in the fall of 2022. This time, it's all about the historic Métis community of Georgian Bay. In the fall of 2022, Canadian Geographic published an article written by the Métis Nation of Ontario called Rivers of Resistance. MNO and Canadian Geographic also issued this map, showing the locations of MNO's historic Métis communities. There's a historical summary of each one in those colored rectangles you see all around the map. Today, I'm going to talk about part of MNO's description of the historic Métis community of Georgian Bay. Here's a closer view of the map, showing the Georgian Bay and environs historic Métis community. It's the brown area near the bottom of the map. The image shown on the upper right of the screen is the historical summary of that community that was written by the Métis Nation of Ontario. I'm not going to read the entire summary. I'll be talking more about this Métis community in other videos, because many of our First Nations ancestors are part of the story that MNO tells about the people of Penetanguishene, also called Drummond Island. Outsiders visiting the area in 1830 described the prevalent costume of the Canadian half-breed as a handkerchief twisted around the head, a shirt and pair of trousers with a gay sash. When they say outsiders visiting the area, they're referring to outsiders visiting Penetanguishene, because that's the place named in the sentence just before this one. That quote about the costume of the Canadian half-breeds is from a book called Winter Studies and Summer Rambles in Canada by Anna Brownell Jameson. Jameson enjoyed traveling. She kept journals of her experiences, which were later published. She arrived in the province of Upper Canada in 1836. Her husband, Robert Jameson, later became the province's first vice-chancellor to the Court of Equity. Some of you may have noticed that Mrs. Jameson says she was accompanied by Old Solomon the interpreter. She's talking about William Solomon, the grandfather of Henry Solomon, who lived in Shebahonaning. This part has nothing to do with style of dress. I just thought I should explain it in case someone noticed the name in the text and wondered which Solomon it was. Here's what Anna Jameson wrote. The voyageurs were disposed on low wooden seats, suspended to the ribs of the canoe, except our Indian steersman, Martin, who, in a cotton shirt, arms bared to the shoulder, loose trousers, a scarlet sash richly embroidered with beads round his waist, and his long black hair waving, took his place in the stern, with a paddle twice as long as the others. Here's what she said about the half-breeds. It starts further down the same page. The other men were all picked men, Canadian half-breeds, young, well-looking, full of glee and good nature, with untiring arms and more untiring lungs and spirits, a handkerchief twisted around the head, a shirt and pair of trousers, with a gay sash, formed the prevalent costume. Notice that she didn't restrict the word voyageur to the Canadian half-breeds in this account. She used it to describe all of the men who are responsible for powering and steering that canoe. The Indian and the half-breeds are, collectively, voyageurs. Also, she said the Indian steersman was wearing a sash around his waist. That doesn't fit with the stereotype that the wearing of a sash automatically indicates that a person is Métis. So here's what we have for style of dress. The Indian steersman, shirt, trousers, sash. The Canadian half-breeds, shirt, trousers, sash, and handkerchief twisted around the head. That handkerchief around the head is the only difference. And you know what image that often triggers. On page 169 of her book, Jameson is talking about the Ottawa and Potawatomi people, and she says, "The Ottawa I soon distinguished by the decency of his dress, and the handkerchief knotted round the head, a custom borrowed from the early French settlers." On page 175, Jameson again notes, on meeting one of the Odawa chiefs, that he had a red and green handkerchief twined around his head with much elegance and knotted in front. Whether she's right or wrong about the origin of wearing a handkerchief around the head, her descriptions show that it was not unique to the dress of Canadian half-breeds. Since MNO's focus is on the Penetanguishene area, let's take a look at the artwork of Titus Ware. He made these drawings in nearby Coldwater in September 1844, just 7 years after Anna Jameson's trip around Lake Huron. The men in this drawing are wearing moccasins, leggings, a long coat, and hats with a brim and a flat top. Their coats seem to be pulled in at the waist, but there's nothing in the drawing to show whether that's caused by a drawstring or a belt or something else. In this one, 2 men are wearing belts of some kind. Look at the man on the right. It seems like there's something hanging down from his belt on the right-hand side. In this drawing, we finally see what that something is. It's a red sash, worn around the waist. And the notes Ware made on his drawings are very clear about who his subjects were. Indians at Coldwater, near Lake Huron, Upper Canada, 1844. Now let's look at something a lot of people are very familiar with, the work of Frances Anne Hopkins. She was a British woman who married an official of the Hudson's Bay Company. They traveled by canoe to many places, and during those trips, she produced sketches and paintings that today have been described as historical records of voyageur life in the 1800s. This is one of her paintings, called Shooting the Rapids. What about the style of dress shown in this painting? They all seem to be wearing a shirt and trousers. Some have hats, some don't. Some have scarves around their necks, others don't. The man in the bow seems to be the only one wearing a headscarf, and it looks like he's wearing a sash too. There's one guy near the back, where the blue arrow is pointing, who might be wearing a headscarf, but it looks like it covers the top of his head, not like the guy in the bow, whose head is not completely covered. Here's another example of Hopkins' work. This one's called Canoe Manned by Voyageurs Passing a Waterfall. What about the voyageur's style of dress in this one? I added numbers to this image and made it bigger, so it's easier for you to know which person I'm talking about. Number 1, a shirt, a scarf, and a hat with a brim. Number 2, a shirt, a scarf, a red toque, and possibly a sash. If you look down near his elbow, there seems to be a red belt or a sash. Number 3, a shirt. Number 4, a shirt and a hat. It's hard to tell if it's the same as number 1's hat. Number 5, a shirt, a yellow scarf, and a headband. Number 6, a shirt, possibly a headband. Number 7, a shirt. Number 8, a shirt, trousers, and a scarf. This famous painting of the voyageurs shows diversity in style of dress, not uniformity. But that didn't stop the Métis Nation of Ontario from using this well-known painting on the cover of their October 2017 Voyageur magazine. They identify strongly with the word voyageur, as if it's synonymous with the word Métis, and they use this image as a cultural icon, despite the fact that it does not demonstrate the style of dress that they claim was common among the half-breed voyageurs. Let's go back to MNO's evidence for a Métis style of dress among the half-breeds in Penetanguishene. First of all, it was not outsiders, plural, who described the half-breeds. It was one outsider, Anna Jameson, pictured here. MNO says that Jameson's trip to locations around Lake Huron happened in 1830, but it actually took place in 1837. When she described the Canadian half-breeds, she was not in the Penetanguishene area, as MNO claims, shown by the yellow dot on the map. She was where the red dot is, on Manitoulin Island, about to leave after watching the annual distribution of presents to Indians. Her descriptions of Indian and half-breed styles of dress show that they dressed in similar ways, not different ways. And she noted that Odawa men could be distinguished from Potawatomi people by a handkerchief that they wore twisted around the head. Titus Ware's drawings include a red sash as part of the style of dress for Indian men at Coldwater. We also looked at two of Francis Hopkins' paintings of voyageurs. They each showed a diverse style of dress, not a common one. The words voyageur, half-breed, and Métis are not interchangeable, and there is no foundation for MNO's claim to a unique style of dress for their historic Métis community of Georgian Bay.